So this video is really for our class, for the students, because they all know that before we went on this break, we were working on our books in school, and I was really excited about my book that I was writing about the birch tree, and also really excited about their books. So I thought I would put together this presentation to remind them of what we were doing with our book writing and about the work that we were doing in class, so that they can start writing their own book at home. So that is part of the next packet, and it's going to be part of some of the next online learning things that we're going to be trying to do. So first, I wanted to remind you guys that we are trying to read like writers. So if you read like a writer, then that helps you to write like a writer. So you're like a real author. And if you look at some of the books that you have at home, or some of the ones on Wonders, or the ones that Mrs. Deschamps assigned you on reading A to Z, you can be inspired just like we were inspired by books that we were reading in class. So this is the list that we made when we were together, and we talked about different features and stories like speech bubbles and using all capital letters, different font, different illustrations, using text in different places throughout the stories, being realistic, having a problem and solution, all sorts of different things that we went through together that you guys identified in books that we read. So I want to go through a lot of these things and show you different examples. So the first thing I wanted to show you were titles. So you guys probably all remember these stories. Going Places, The Dot, The Big Orange Spot, and Amos and Boris. And these were all part of the study that we were doing that we read together. So notice on the title pages, and when you do your book, you can do the same thing. Some of the authors wrote the titles at the top with the picture underneath. Some of the authors wrote the title in the middle, but however they did it, they made sure it was really clear that people knew what the title was. So here's an example from my book, and I wrote the title of my book on the tree branch. This is April's book, and she wrote the title at the top and then put her picture in the box, which was a really good idea. Also notice that my book and April's book have the author on there, just like these real books do. So make sure you include the authors. That's really important. Another thing we talked about is including an about the author. Remember when we read Going Places and we learned that Peter and Paul Reynolds were twins? And this is what they wrote about themselves. They wrote about different books that they've read, that they've written, and different ways that they were inspired, where they live, a lot of different things like that. So you can include that in your book when you write your about the author. This is Zoe's about the author, and she wrote, "The author Zoe is 9 years old. She plays Minecraft with her brother, and they will play for hours until bedtime. They will play until school. She also writes books at home, then she mails them to her aunt to make them 3D. So Zoe wrote about how she likes Minecraft because her book was all about Minecraft, so the different things connect. This is Izzy's about the author for her book that she wrote about going to her grandma's house. And she wrote, "The author Izzy is 9 years old. I like to go to my grandma's house because I get to play in her tree with my friend Angelica." So the about the author a lot of times connects with the story. Another thing you can include in your book is a dedication. So in Eric's book, he dedicated his book to his dad, I think because he wrote his book about Minecraft, and his dad plays Minecraft with him or helps him play Minecraft. For Josh, he dedicated his book to his uncle because his uncle taught him to hunt, and his book was all about hunting. For my book, remember, I had dedicated it to my dad because he always kept everything around the birch tree nice and neat and clean, so it was fun to play around. So this is from The Paper Crane, and Molly Bang, the author of that book, dedicated her book to Libby, Ava, and Susan with much love and thanks for all these years. Another thing you can do as you're writing your story is change the font. So you can see in this picture from the Hello Goodbye window, just about in the middle, they wrote, "Hello world, what have you got for us today?" in all capital letters, because you know that that means that the reader has to change their voice. And Mo Willems did a similar thing in his book, Today I Will Fly. He used a speech bubble with all capital letters and an exclamation point. So that really helps add a lot of emotion and feeling to the story. Tristan used speech bubbles in his book, and he also changed his font. So notice his character there is saying, "A robot," with a lot of exclamation points. And then in the Going Places book, they have a speech bubble actually coming out of the announcer's like big horn that he was using. And the font there is in all capital letters. And notice those numbers, the 4, 3, 2, 1, are bigger than everything else. So you can decide as the author of your book how you want to organize things. We looked a lot at illustrations and talked about how some authors or some illustrators like to do them across both pages, because if you run out of room, that's a good solution. This one's from Amos and Boris. Notice the whale is so big that it has to go across both pages. This is from Going Places. They just had so much detail and so many things they wanted to add in about the race that they had to use both pages. The silhouette illustrations were one of my favorite things. I liked how the Molly Bang did it in The Paper Crane, and Peter and Paul Reynolds did it in Going Places, and just makes the lighting look really cool on the characters. So I was inspired to do that in my book. Another thing that a lot of you guys did in your books was using the series of pictures. Remember in Amos and Boris, the author of that story drew the picture, the illustrator, I'm sorry, of that story drew the pictures of the process of him building the boat. And then in The Paper Crane, the series of pictures shows how the restaurant changed over the years. So I know Hunter used a series of pictures. Hayden also used a series of pictures with his characters. And he's also got a lot of speech bubbles in there. Madison used the series, and so did I in my book. So a lot of you tried to do that. So your next steps are to choose a topic, plan your book, and then once you plan it, ask an adult to help you to edit and improve it a little bit. You can also schedule a video chat with myself or with Mrs. Deschamps, and we can look at your book ideas together before you start your final copy. So your challenge is to try to write a book on your own at home. When you're picking an idea, we talked about this in class too, you might pick something that's your hobby, a memory of something, hopes and dreams of something you want to do in the future, something you love, something with your family, or an experience that you've already had, or something that's not even on this list. When you write your book, please make sure you have a title page with the author, because we have to know who wrote the book. Include your about the author. Make sure you have a beginning, a middle, and an end, and that your story makes sense so that it's fun for a reader to read your book. And also check to make sure you have capitals and punctuation where they belong. So once you've done your first draft and planned out your book, you can start your final copy and then try to share your story. You can read it to someone at home. Maybe you can make a video like I did with my Tale of Peter Rabbit read aloud, or like I'm doing now. Or you can also ask Mrs. Deschamps or I if you can read your book during a video chat. Just make sure you practice it. So we're really excited for you to get started on your books, just like we were doing at school. And there are pages in the new packet that's available on Thursday to help you, or you can just use blank paper that you have at home, or lined paper, whatever works. You can be creative and do your story. So I'm really looking forward to hearing your books and seeing your progress on them. So keep working hard.